Well, welcome to the second session of today's summit, looking at the whole question of global vaccine rollout. And can I, as convener of the Commission, first of all, just thank the whole team at the School of Transnational Governments in Florence, and Alex Staub and Jonas for pulling all of this together. This Commission has got 4 global hubs, one in Asia Pacific, one in India, one here in Europe, and one in North America with Harvard, MIT. And today is our European summit for gathering insights from across the whole of the European collection of nations. And in this theme, we're going to be looking at this very serious question of global vaccine rollout. For those who don't know me, I was the UK's first Minister for Life Science back in the Cameron government in the coalition elected in 2010. And I've served in the last government as Minister for Decarbonisation. And at the heart of this commission, we're trying to ask some really deep questions about how really we will make COVID a moment to commit seriously internationally to cleaner and healthier growth. Because in the end, cleaner growth and healthier growth go hand in hand. But of course, to get to that point, we need, first of all, the urgent issue of vaccinations and to make sure that we have proper pandemic preparedness for global vaccine rollout. And I think everybody would accept that we've seen some successes, but we've seen some real challenges as well. And so I'm joined by a distinguished panel this morning to answer some of those questions and tease out the key issues that we need to be embedding in a post-COVID framework. If we get this right, I think our vision is it'll be as significant as after the crash in 2007-8, the work that the OECD, the World Bank and others did to strengthen financial resilience, to strengthen financial systems. If we get this right, we could strengthen global commitment to health systems, both in terms of emergency pandemic relief, but also making sure that we can prevent and strengthen the resilience of health economies going forward. So the global vaccine rollout, I'm joined by a very distinguished panel and let's get a conversation going. I'll give each a chance to kick off with some thoughts. Let's start with Nguyen.
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you here today, and thank you very much for the invitation. So maybe if I can talk a little bit about the COVAX initiative that is helping fair and equitable rollout of COVID-19 vaccines. Having been set up in record time, we have COVAX on track to its goals with 190 participating economies. And importantly, that includes 92 low and lower middle income economies that are supported by the advanced market commitment. In total, the COVAX facility covers about 90% of the global population, and we've secured 2 billion doses through agreements with vaccine manufacturers and supported so far by $6 billion of funding to the advanced market commitment. And maybe to talk about where we were at the onset of the pandemic and what has led to COVAX so far, and maybe I can say a bit about where COVAX is heading. I mean, essentially, to start with the obvious, which is the massive scale of the pandemic, which I think it got a historic scientific response in return and a recognition of the vaccine role, but also I think a realization that history was at risk of repeating itself and that we didn't have a sustained and coordinated global solution. And so the call to action by world leaders led to the creation of the ACTA and within that COVAX. So COVAX is jointly led by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the World Health Organization, and CEPI, and very much sort of drawing on the advantages and strengths of each organization. So this is very much sort of a unique global health response to a historic pandemic. And we've seen, I think, in the vaccine development space, incredible innovation, but also now we're seeing it in terms of distribution. So we heard from the Gavi chair, Jose Manuel Barroso, at the beginning of this event, the achievement in terms of vaccine launches, the first launches that happened in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire 83 days after the first dose administered in the UK. And this has never been seen before in the history of previous pandemics. So really, I think tremendous progress so far, but also tremendous challenges, I think, facing us now that we're in a situation where we have maybe about 2 to 3% of the global population that has been vaccinated. That number hides huge inequities in terms of the level of vaccinations between high-income and low-income countries. And also, I think, important for us to monitor the impact of variants, given that the vaccination numbers are going to be impacted by the scientific and the programmatic challenges that the variants pose. So what we want to be doing is we want to be pooling demand, we want to be pooling financial resources to have a solution to offer supply to countries that will not be able to get vaccines independently. But we're also seeing that a large number of countries are securing doses bilaterally through deals and are exacerbating, I think, an inequitable supply. So in the near term, we're facing challenges with this lack of equitable distribution, the supply constraints, and the manufacturers, still needing to ramp up their production. And we're seeing that, we have to work a lot with countries in terms of trying to redistribute vaccines. So dose sharing is going to be very important as we think about trying to get more vaccines to lower income economies. So the critical mechanism that we're using to make this happen, we have a funding opportunity that's being launched this afternoon to raise another 2 billion, and hoping that that will be one of the steps taken to find a way out of the pandemic.
That's brilliant. I saw you were described recently in Time magazine as the person who has the health of the world in your hands, in your role. I was just, if I put you on the spot and said 1, 2, 3, what would be the recommendations? If the G20 was sitting here and said, what do we need to do to make sure that if, God forbid, this happened in 2 years, a better vaccine manufacturing and distribution system? Is it clear to you some very basic things we need to do?
So I think one is preparedness, and that comes with financing, not just in the heat of the pandemic, but also I think sustained systems being put in place and financing being put in place for to be able to be ready, because we know that it's an evolutionary certainty that there will be future pandemics. I think 2 is on supply. We are going to be working in any emerging pandemic under supply constraints situation, and making sure that we have a system that is set up. And then I think the third is around cooperation and what we can do in terms of reducing competition for scarce doses, and making sure that we have a coordinated approach.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so let's keep the theme. We'll go to India, and Umesh, Shaligram, I think you're there. Are you with us? You are. Good. So the Serum Institute there in India is the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world and a crucial supplier in the COVID supply chain. It's a family-run business, grown over decades, and today you're seeking to coordinate with the Indian government to increase further the production of vaccines in India, which begs the question, in a crisis like this, how do we achieve the right balance between private sector innovation and governmental coordination in India, but around the world? Your reflections, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, first of all the organizers for giving me a chance to sharing my thoughts on this platform, which is really a privilege, and I'm honored. Thank you very much. Certainly, Serum plays a key role, and this pandemic has made it very clear that its manufacturer, and more important, as a cost-effective manufacturer, is a key driver for really decision-making, which has been a role which was played under visionary effort by Dr. Poonawalla and now other Poonawalla, and we have been reason for saving more than 50 million lives actually up till now, which is not yet been well known to a lot of people, but measles, rubella, obviously government has to look at their country first. Actually, it's obvious reaction. And how to save my people and my country actually is a reaction which is going to happen. And somehow that reaction, there has to be a platform where this reaction put together is seen as a global, because pandemic is global. It is not a proprietary of any country or any issue. So it has become a global pandemic actually. And even if you try to do something for that small geographical area, it is going to really constrain it for small time. And it is the second wave or third wave is going to hit back actually. And geographies will have a different waves which are going to come out. So the key over here is can a coordination complex be made, a right coordination complex, where implementation people who actually are vaccinating and hotspots of most probable hotspots of where you need to do a vaccination actually. So there if you remain focused, so focus efforts with the implementation people, manufacturer and supply chain management people together, creating a right prioritization is the key. Creating a right focus area is the key, because you cannot have all the vaccines and you can't give it to everybody in one day. It is going to be, vaccines are going to be available. As they are available, you have to vaccinate the people. So you have to really work out as a globally what is going to be our focus area, where to vaccinate, whom to vaccinate, and what should be a priority. And if you go with that logic, then probably you will have a sufficient vaccine in your hand and you will be able to vaccinate. At present, everybody wants a vaccine, and you can't provide everybody a vaccine. You need to understand. Like I give an example today of my own country actually, India, where you have a lot of hotspots which are coming up. Now, Pune itself is a big hotspot of COVID-19. And what one would need to do is, if you focus only on Pune or some of the major districts in Maharashtra state and vaccinate them, maybe avoid the rural population at present, vaccinate there also 45 and above, vulnerable population, then maybe we will be able to focus, prioritize, and do an effective vaccination, and that will reduce the intensity of the disease, and then slowly spread over and work over disease elimination strategy. So you should have, that's the whole activity which we need to work out the correct coordination. That's the way.
Brilliant, thank you. So look, I'm going to go to Helen, and then Pierre will come back round to Europe. Helen, you're as well placed as anyone to sort of comment on this global challenge, or the work that you're doing in South Africa, but also through the CEPI and the WHO. You're following this very closely. I suppose two questions. How instrumental do you think these international institutions and public-private partnerships, CEPI and COVAX, have been, and reflections and lessons on what we should and could be looking at to do better next time?
Well, I think many of the big global agencies form part of a complex jigsaw in terms of how we respond, or how we have responded to the pandemic. And if I start with the World Health Organization, one of the things that we've learned and we're reflecting on is international health regulations, because at the outset of the pandemic, Dr. Tedros convened an emergency committee, and I'm actually joining that emergency committee this afternoon. And the role of that emergency committee is to consider whether or not there is a public health emergency of international concern, and then to set temporary recommendations for countries under international health regulations. Now, one of the things that we will be reflecting back on after this, as we did after Ebola, is whether those international health regulations are still strong enough and robust enough to really mobilize globally all countries to respond in a cohesive way under the direction of WHO. So I think that's the first sort of lesson learned, and we need to reflect back on it, because IHR is one of the few global tools that we have to try and coordinate global response. The second thing I think we've learned, after the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, CEPI was established, and CEPI is also a public-funded organization. The aim is to develop vaccines for pathogens of outbreak potential, for which there are no vaccines, and for public access. And fortunately, there was a lot of investment that had gone on before COVID appeared in specific vaccines, but also what we call vaccine platforms. And lesson learned there, I would say, is that actually developing CEPI was a very good move, because we were able to, as you mentioned, I'm with the Scientific Advisory Committee. We had a meeting last year in January and February when we looked at the outbreak in China. And one of the comments made by one of the advisors was, well, should we mobilize CEPI's funds towards COVID, just in case this turns out to be the pathogen for a pandemic? And we did, and CEPI did. And we were able to move those technologies and move manufacturing at a speed that wouldn't have otherwise happened. And the last thing I would say in terms of lessons learned, and I'll add to what Aurélia has said on COVAX, is that we built up Gavi, and Gavi for many people might not be known, but it's one of the most powerful funding tools, technical support tools for empowering poorest countries in terms of access to vaccines. If we didn't have Gavi, we wouldn't have been able to develop COVAX on its back. So I think that, and Gavi has already got a role in global health security in terms of things like stockpiles for cholera and Ebola. So I would say that we've also learned, having these institutions, all three of them, and being able to then flexibly and rapidly change their portfolio of work and their direction has been incredibly important. But we now need to say, which bit of that do we want to then build in for the future?
Thank you, Helen, very much. Powerful thoughts globally. Let's come, Pierre, to Europe. And I was saying earlier, we've set up this commission in the Northern Hemisphere first, the G20, the richest nations in the world, because it seems to us that the responsibility for leading and shaping the response sits with us, the richer nations. But ultimately, it's one world and one globe and one health system. Pierre, obviously the health isn't a European Union competency, so each of the European countries does its own health system. And I'm not one of those people in Britain who's looked across and with any glee at the success in the UK as one island nation to roll out vaccines. We're all as healthy as each other. How would you describe from the European Commission point of view the lessons that are beginning to be learned, if it's not too soon, about how different countries have responded, about the ability of Europe as a community of nations to share data and to frame common and shared responses? Is this, do you think, something that will deepen health as a global, as a European competence, or do you think it'll lead to countries wanting to do their own system? How do you see that playing out?
Thank you very much, George, and thank you very much for being invited me to this very interesting conference, despite the technical problems, but that's another story. First of all, I would like to follow what you say. I don't believe it's a fight between countries. It's not a question of comparing what's being done in UK compared to Europe, compared to the US, or compared to the rest of the world. We only have one enemy, which is the virus itself. And also the second very clear lesson from the situation in which we are, that we will not be able to cope with the virus if not everybody is being protected. So nobody will be protected until everybody is protected. So that would be my really very key message, which also trigger our reaction in Europe. The second point I would like to say, and I would like to follow up on what Aurélia has said. Aurélia has said it's impressive to a certain extent that low-income countries already receive so fast vaccines. But the first thing which is impressive is the fact that the vaccine has been developed so fast. Because we tend to forget actually that all those developments took place in less than a year between the start of the crisis and the moment that first vaccines were injected. So I believe also, and that's also because of the money which was injected, by rich countries, let's be clear, like the EU, so they did, and to facilitate the development of those vaccines. So of course it's a very sad situation in which we are, but also the reaction and the fact that we've been able to develop those vaccines so fast is something which is important. Third element, which I believe, you mentioned the reaction in the EU. And you say it's a national competence. But again, what we call the vaccine strategy is a good example of a situation where member states have understood actually it's only by working together that we are able to secure enough vaccines for everybody in Europe. Let's be very clear. The fact that we've been able to, potentially at the end of this year will be more than 2.6 billion vaccines available in Europe is because we have worked together, because we have worked as one front. And I would say that lesson that we have learned in Europe is also valid on the global world. And the COVID initiative, the Gavi initiative and COVAX is something which is extremely important because it shows it's only by working of the world. Because if you want to distribute vaccines in low-income countries, you need to have production capabilities which are sufficient. And let's not forget that in this respect, despite all the criticism I read sometimes, the main and almost the only producers of vaccines in the world is Europe. We are exporting a lot of vaccines in other parts of the world. So that's something we should not forget.
Yeah.
Second element also, which I believe is important also for low-income countries, we focus a lot on the vaccine production, which of course is very important. But injecting the vaccines to people is also extremely important. I'm talking about the last mile, and we see that even in developed countries, that's not that easy to in high-level countries, it's not that easy to do. In low-income countries, that would be even more difficult. And again, the European Commission stands ready to help to do this last mile and to make sure actually that injection actually reach the vaccine reach the people on the ground. That's what we want. And maybe my last message, and it's not maybe a note of optimism, but we need also to be realistic. We need already now to anticipate the next crisis. We know that very likely there will be variants of concerns which will not be affected by the current vaccines. So we need to anticipate the situation, not only for Europe, because to come back to my initial point, but for the rest of the world. We know that at one point we will have to have new vaccines or these modification of the current vaccine. And so we need, and we, as a Commission, as the European Union, we want to work with the member states to make sure that we are ready also for this. And that's what we have decided to do. I would say
we've got amazing questions coming in. We've got 15 minutes, and just to see if we could run through them. First one I wanted to ask the three of you is how worried should we be about, we've seen China and Russia promoting quite aggressively their own vaccine into spheres of influence and countries where they have a geopolitical economic interest. Should we be worried about this, or should we say, look, all vaccine is good vaccine, it's just how it is? Pierre, is this something we should be worried about?
As you say, the key should be the protection of people. So it's not the fact that a vaccine has a different origin. It's not the question of the origin of vaccine. We need to make sure that those vaccines are safe and really effective, not only safe, but also effective against the disease. And that should be the main priority. And that's something to which we attach a lot of importance. And again, as I said, as the European Union, we know that we are producing very good vaccines in Europe. And of course, we want to share them, and we want to continue to be part of COVAX mechanism. We are also establishing what we call vaccine sharing mechanism in Europe, which basically would help actually Europe to contribute to COVAX, because we believe this is something important. Now, if the vaccines are available and that it's demonstrated they are safe and effective, that's okay. But let's be careful. There is also one danger if people are vaccinated with vaccines which are not effective. And I'm not saying they are not effective. I'm not taking position. I just think we need to be clear on that. That was also my point.
Yeah. Aurélia and Helen, same question. Aurélia, should we be worried, or should we say, look, vaccine that's all that matters?
So, I think first of all, to make the point that we have a huge vaccine demand, given the scale of the situation that we're facing, and no single supplier is going to be able to answer this problem. So we need to have as many manufacturers as possible, regardless of where they come from, I think develop. And as we've seen, there has been a tremendous response from the vaccine industry, which has been very welcome, and across different technology platforms as well. So it's a question of geographic diversity, it's a question of technological diversity that we need. What is then important is indeed to make sure that we have the opportunity through for COVAX, the WHO mechanisms are the ones of preference, so the emergency use listing and then pre-qualification, to understand the safety and efficacy of vaccines. So it's really important that all the manufacturers submit their data and do so in a timely manner, so that the vaccines can be assessed and then ultimately, procured and distributed as widely as possible. So I think this diversity of innovation is very welcome. It needs to come, I think, with a good coordination and a very sort of timely submission from manufacturers to be able to review the safety and efficacy data.
Yeah, makes sense. So Helen, we need to get the vaccine out there. There's huge demand. As long as safety and standards are right and transparent, we can relax. And to the extent there's always been, international aid efforts. There's some diplomacy. We just have to not let that get in the way of getting the vaccine out. Is that right?
Well, yes, and I guess, but I think I push it back more broadly. I would also say that there's a geopolitical issue when countries that are manufacturing buy up all their own vaccines and hoard them. So I mean, on the one hand, you've got countries that might be saying we want to forge strong partnerships with other emerging economies by using vaccines, and on the other hand, we've got countries that say we don't need to do that, so we're going to hoard. So I think that we have to reflect on all of that, not just one aspect of that geopolitical sort of distribution, and say what have we learned from this? And it's essentially, I would say, sitting in the African region, that it's highly unhealthy for countries that are manufacturing, wherever they are, to be hoarding on the one hand and stopping distribution, and then leaving countries without, so that people are going to be looking everywhere. But the second thing I would say, and I think this is one of the good things that has come out of COVID, there are good things, well, lessons learned is a better expression, and that is on the regulatory issues. Because as Aurélia said, we need every vaccine that we can possibly get that's safe and effective and of good quality. But what has happened here is that, and I speak because I'm involved with the South African Regulatory Authority, that all the regulatory authorities are very strongly talking to each other and exchanging information about the evaluations of vaccines. Because we shouldn't confuse the urgency to get vaccines out there with the fact that we're going to cut corners on quality and on effectiveness and safety. So I think the regulatory, going forward, lessons learned, regulatory dialogue and reliance and exchange of information needs to be strengthened. It is not, from where I'm sitting, nearly strong enough, and I don't think that the stringent regulatory authorities yet have opened their doors, as I think they should, to developing country regulators.
Yeah, key point. Thank you. Very powerfully put. Can I've been told we've got permission to run up to 12, so we can recoup a little bit of the time we lost for that technical intervention earlier. Can I ask you, all three, what you think the right approach should be to sort of vaccine, the cultural barriers, the anti-vax movement, some of it utterly spurious and actually sort of criminally negligent and dishelpful. Others, culturally, religious, it isn't a universally simple thing for all cultures around the world. How do you think we should, as a global community, tackle the kind of universality of, look, this is a vaccine and it's good for you, it's been well made, but be sensitive to people's concerns? Helen, let's start with you, because I know you've thought about this a lot, but is there an answer to that?
Georgia, I agree with you. I think there are a number of people in all countries of the world who just don't want vaccines. So let's put that to one side. I think there are many, many more people who are asking legitimate questions. They're saying, have you rushed this development process? Are they going to be safe? How do we know? Is it safe for my grandmother, my son who's young? These are legitimate questions. And so I would say there are a couple of things that we have to do. First of all, we have to, as scientists, I put a science hat on, we have to be able to explain the process, and that accelerated development of vaccines is not the same as rushing, and that we have not missed out any of those procedures. The second thing we have to reassure people about, and we're seeing it with AZ, and we're seeing it with J&J now, and we'll see it with all the vaccines, is that as a global community, we are on top of safety monitoring, and we will respond sensibly and responsibly if there is a safety signal. The third thing I would say, though, is that this is actually, on the other side, an extraordinary opportunity to push vaccines, to say, I think the general population around the world knows more about vaccines today than a year ago. And most people are saying, we want vaccines. We want them safe and good quality, and we want them to be effective, but we want vaccines. We should, on the other side of this, be actually saying, from a communications perspective, how do we take advantage of that extraordinary opportunity to say that vaccines are one of our most powerful public health tools?
That's a brilliant point. And I also suspect, sitting a mile from the city of London, there's an opportunity to get people to sort of patriotically invest, in global vaccines. Put your money, make the world a healthier place, back your vaccine bond. It's going to save the country a fortune and maybe some interesting fintech opportunities to make sure that we can encourage people to invest as well. Aurélia, do you think there's a danger that that I looked the other day on social media, and it was the previous session of today's summit, looking at the infodemic and how information through this pandemic has been distributed by millions of sites, many of which are not reputable. I think it's the first pandemic where that was an issue. What's the right approach, do you think, to kind of making sure that information out there is approved and safe and control that information flow?
So, indeed, I mean, the vaccine questions is creating a huge amount of attention, as one would expect. I think maybe to start with the point that Helen made and emphasized it, which are that people's questions are legitimate and I think should be treated as such. I think the vaccine is an important part of the COVID-19 response, and therefore it is understandably and rightly, I think, getting scrutiny in terms of its aspects to make sure that the vaccines are safe and efficacious. So I think really, taking the opportunity, I think, to embrace the attention and understanding that indeed, compared to the last pandemic, the way that information is shared has evolved significantly. And I think in that engagement, I think it's understanding what are the community influencers and making sure that we can really engage at community level, that it's not just a sort of top-down approach, and engaging with community leaders and social media influencers and making sure that they have all the information that they need, I think, and can be able to share and amplify through their networks, I think is an important piece. And then I think also in terms of being active in correcting where there is misinformation circulating
and disease, and we're going to hold you liable and expect them to manage it. But there we are. Hate mail will probably flow in now. Pierre, can I ask, from the European point of view, I mean, if anything has demonstrated the community of nations that is the EU, it's this, right? I mean, all the borders, the coterminosity. What do you think will be the legacy? Do you think in 10 years, 5 years, Europe will have a much stronger role in public health as a result of this? And can you just speculate about how you see that playing out, given the lessons that everyone's learned about the importance of their neighbours, and you're only as healthy and safe as your neighbours are?
Thank you very much. I would say your previous comment was quite impressive. That's interesting. On your point on, let's be very clear. As you said, one lesson of the crisis is the fact that we realize that it's only by working together that we are able to fight the virus. Because we are focusing now on the vaccines, but let's not forget we had also to work together for masks, material, equipment, medicine and so on. So member states have realized that it's actually in some cases you need to work together, and you need to work together in the health sector. I'm not there to guess, what will be the situation in 10 years' time or 15 years' time. It's very difficult. I would simply say that there is now a clear awareness by member states that health matters, first of all, because from an economic point of view, so, health is now really getting perceived, which is really important. And second element, which is also clear, that we need in the health sector, we need to work together more than we did in the past. And I believe this awareness is there. Now, where are we going to stop, this process? I don't know. I cannot guess. But certainly the fact that we are moving in the direction of more coordination at the EU level in the health sector is something for me which is clear. And again, not only at the EU level, because as we were discussing, also at the international level, there is also, of course, the WHO is there, but clearly we need to reinforce it. And what Helen said about the reinforcement, the need to reinforce also, is something which is also very true at all levels. So where are we going to end up? I hope we will be in a situation when we will be faced with a new pandemic in the future. I don't know when exactly. All of us will be much better organized and be ready to fight this new pandemic.
Thank you. Last question I wanted to ask you was about data. We've I had a background in health informatics, and I believe and love health data. I think it's part of a functioning health system, as I'm sure you do. And I noticed through the pandemic that even in the UK, we couldn't compare data from Oxford to Cambridge. We couldn't compare Scotland to the UK. Across Europe, politicians say, you can't compare Germany to the... In the end, global comparative data is fundamental, isn't it, to safety, to efficacy, to trust. Do you think this is a platform, Helen, let's start with you. Is this a moment where, as a legacy, we'll see a much stronger sort of universal commitment to comparative health data?
Yes, and actually I would want to congratulate the UK, because I think in fact your data collection and your conclusions have been globally very helpful. But I think it's absolutely essential. We're saying, for example, at the moment in the African region, are we seeing lower mortality rates? And everything we say is, well, we might well be, which might be really interesting to understand, but we might not be because we just don't have confidence in the data. So I think that sort of data is going to be absolutely critical and strengthening it. And now with all of the opportunities, the virtual opportunities, IT, etc., we can do it. The second thing that we have really seen come to life is laboratory. Across the African region, for example, I'll take one example, genomics. Genomics, which was really centered in essentially one country, we're now getting samples and people are looking at it. The laboratories have sprung up in order to be able to diagnose. This is going to be of critical importance because, as we've all said, this is not going to be the last pandemic or the last regional outbreak. So I would support you strongly. I think lesson learned, big data and analysis and universality of data and laboratory surveillance critical.
Seems to me if we get this right, we strike a blow for both digital health. Wouldn't it be wonderful if, as a result of this, billions of people are on digital health platforms, which will dramatically reduce the cost of interventions. It also help us genomically profile rare diseases and suddenly make it commercially viable, a rare disease that's not commercial at the moment. If you've got a global community, you've got a population, it's a big legacy for us. If we can get this right, we could really accelerate access around the world to new treatments. Aurélia, Pierre, closing comments on from this vaccine session. The big message.
Thank you very much. And I think, maybe to connect all of this in terms of all of the aspects that need to come together in terms of the vaccine itself and the technological innovation that we've seen there. I think the multilateral cooperation mechanisms and the cooperation between countries, funders, recipients, and making sure that then we have in place everything that needs to happen on the ground for delivery, and also a tremendous opportunity for innovation there. So really for us to think about the precedents that we have and that we're setting now with COVAX in terms of model, how we think about the alternatives that we need to every country for itself approach, where ultimately we're not going to have the impact that we want on a public health perspective, and we're not going to be ready for the next pathogen that emerges.
Thank you. And Pierre, last word.
That's why, first of all, on digital and data, I fully agree with what has been said. We clearly need to work in that direction, and that's something we are doing. Now, last word, I would say simply, like to the green dimension, if we want our planet to be safe, we need that we all have to address the issue of environment, all of us together in the world. That's exactly the same for health. We will be able to cope with the future, with the situation, pandemics in the future, only if we work together. That's probably the main lesson of the crisis, a very important one, and we should not forget it, because that's also one of my concerns, that when we will be out of the crisis in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, people might tend to forget about it, and we should never do it. We should keep that in mind and look to work together in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I thank the three of you for, with our colleagues in India, a brilliant session on vaccines, and just close by saying two things. The next session, the third in this summit, is on the healthier work environment. This is a really important part of our broader commission work. We're trying to ask the really big question. As COVID has swept across the developed world, it's tested every health system, and we want to make sure we learn the lessons. And we want to make sure that as we build back better, cleaner growth for low decarbonisation, to see whether we couldn't build healthier growth into our model of global growth. At every level, couldn't we ask the G20 and the OECD to actually measure what healthy growth looks like? How well is your GDP growth correlated to your population health? And what do we learn about those countries that are getting healthier more quickly than others? And that goes right down to workplace and the companies on the ground asking, how do we really drive healthier populations, healthier supply chains, healthier workforce? And a lot of it comes down to the furniture, the diet, the office, the car park, the daily interaction of businesses on the front line. And so at the heart of our commission, our global hubs, we're bringing in a strong voice from business, because if we can harness the genius of businesses to drive healthier growth, then we'll take it from being a conversation in government offices down to something that's happening every day. So stay with us for our next session. But for now, thank you very much, Aurélia, Helen, Pierre, and our team in India for shining a light on what I think historians will look back, I hope, and say this was a historic moment where the world quickly rolled out vaccines and then quickly learned the lessons to make sure that future pandemics, it had a vaccine emergency service ready and in place. And thank you personally to you for all that you're doing. Over to our last session on a healthier work environment.